Honourable Gobin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, I think it is important to once again recall the context in which Budget 2022-2023 is being presented before this House. The context, once again, therefore, being the COVID pandemic, successive lockdowns, and the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, these two countries being major producers of basic commodities. And it is in this context that food security has taken center stage. Honourable Yutim asked earlier what has been the production of food crops. He has mentioned that time and again we announce schemes for the farming community. I would be pleased to inform the House that the agricultural sector, the statistics for 2021 show that the agricultural sector grew by 9.5% in 2021. And food crop production, and that would be open field only. Food crop production in open field only increased by 6.8% from 2020 to 2021. And in terms of tonnage, so food crop production in 2020 was 95,029 tons, reaching in year 2021, 101,537. That is encouraging. And this is the background. And in the context of the geopolitical situation, food security, as I said earlier, has taken center stage. Now, how do we articulate our food security policy? And it will be impossible for me in 30 minutes or 45 minutes to go into each and every sector, but I will highlight, I think, the main ones. Il faut commencer par le commencement, and that is with seeds and fertilizers. And once again, government has put grants and subsidies to help farmers for seeds and fertilizers. And especially in the context of a surge in the prices of fertilizers. It is important to recall that, in fact, these two countries, once again, Russia and Ukraine, are major producers of phosphates, out of which we make fertilizers, which we use extensively, particularly in our sugarcane fields. So therefore, government will help transition to locally produced and sustainable inputs. And 75 million rupees will be provided to cover, for registered planters to cover 50% of their cost of fertilizers. Furthermore, a subsidy of 75% will be provided on the purchase of liquid fertilizers, biofertilizers, and composts produced by cooperatives. Planters and cooperatives will be eligible to a subsidy of 50% up to a maximum of 500,000 rupees for the purchase of equipment for composting. I have to inform the House that as at to date, 1,414 planters have obtained such subsidies. The second point I want to highlight on the food security policy, Mr. Speaker, sir, is that we have to encourage new techniques of agriculture. And the strategic objective is to adopt climate-resilient agriculture, that is, in simple terms, sheltered farming and hydroponics. This budget provides a booster plan to encourage production of fruits and vegetables by granting 50% up to a maximum of 500,000 rupees for the purchase of a sheltered farm for hydroponics, and it has been extended this year for the purchase of a second sheltered farm. I have to inform the House that for the last 2 years, 59 planters have benefited under the sheltered farming scheme for the construction of greenhouses for a total amount of 15.9 million rupees. And that was when the grant was up to 250,000. We have therefore doubled the ceiling. To further encourage growers to adopt this ecological production method, which reduces the use of insecticides and pesticides considerably, VAT exemption is granted on the purchase thereof, and the threshold of the grant, therefore, once again, has been increased to 500,000 rupees. And in this financial year, a total sum of 50 million rupees has been provided. The third point, Mr. Speaker, sir, concerns our sugar sector. Sugar remains a major contributor of foreign exchange in our economy. Earlier, the Honourable Leader of Opposition mentioned that if we have to compare our yield, average yield of sugar compared to Tanzania and he mentioned Swaziland, now called Eswatini. That's correct. Our yield is less, but how are we tackling the issue? First of all, we should recognize why. We should understand why the yield is less. Of course, we cannot compare soil and climate of two different countries, but we have confirmation that cane, as you know, needs to be renewed in your cane field. One cane cannot continuously give you a crop cycle over crop cycle. There is a limit. This is why there is a replantation scheme. It is estimated that even in the big corporate sector, for the big corporate planters, almost 40% of their field have not been replanted. So it's the same, ce qu'on appelle en créole, babacan. This has to be changed. You need to plant new ones. And this is why you will see in this budget, the replantation scheme has been increased from 35,000 rupees to 50,000 rupees per arpent. And importantly, the revolving fund has been set. What will be the revolving fund? It will provide concessionary loans. DBM will provide concessionary loans with an interest of 2.5%. What will they do with that? Is for replantation. This will lead to better production. We agree that we need to make better production, and there is also other schemes for certification. Because we earn money, we are paid on sugar, not on cane. It is on sugar. So the yield has to increase, and we are putting the necessary money in that sector. We are estimating there has been, Mr. Speaker, a steady increase on the world market for the price of sugar. If we are to compare from 2008, it has increased steadily. For crop 2021, the ex-syndicate price was 16,000 rupees. For crop 2022, it is set at 20,000. And therefore, this will lead to an increase in revenue, especially in foreign exchange. And in this budget, once again, for small planters, the guaranteed price of 25,000 rupees has been maintained with 80% crop advance, as well as the other advantages of the waiver on insurance premium payable to the SIFB and other accompanying measures. And it is important here that I highlight that for some small planters that it was a historic measure at the time when the Honourable Prime Minister was also the Minister of Finance, where government had provided the sum of 15 million rupees for the purchase of the first ever cane harvester to be used by small planters. That cane harvester is already in operation, and government has signed a memorandum of understanding for the running and maintenance of the harvester with the MCAF, that is the Mauritius Cooperative Agricultural Federation. I am pleased to announce that a second harvester is on its way, and it will be put at the disposal of small planters, once again under an MOU with MCAF. I have heard my colleague Honorable Utim earlier asking about the national biomass framework. We have made considerable progress on this, Mr. Speaker, sir. The Mauritius Cane Industry Authority, the MCIA, was responsible for drafting the national biomass framework. The framework has been produced and has been submitted to the ministry, to my ministry, some 2 weeks back, 2 or 3 weeks back. The stage we have reached now is that the national biomass framework will be examined by cabinet, and an implementation plan will be rolled out. Coming to the ethanol framework, yes, I'm very thankful to Honorable Utim to mention that. Why are we now thinking of ethanol? Once again, it's because of the consequences of the conflict with surging prices. There was an ethanol framework in the past, but of course it is no longer, it has to be adapted, it has to be revived, and this is being undertaken for Mauritius. That was on the sugar sector, Mr. Speaker. So one final item I want to highlight is the construction of a modern sugar storage facility at Richter, which will store about 150,000 tons of bagged sugar from sugar estates to be handled and stored prior to either local sale or export. This measure is in line with the World Bank recommendation geared towards reducing transport and logistic costs. Land clearing and survey work have been carried out so far. And therefore, for the sugar sector, for this year budget 2022-2023, government is therefore maintaining the 25,000 rupee per ton for planters, will continue to pay the premium of the SIFB in respect of those producing less than 60 tons of sugar, and will waive cess in respect of crop 2022. Yes, indeed. Now, the fourth, after the seeds and fertilizers, sheltered farming, the sugar sector, the fourth item I want to highlight is livestock and cattle, Mr. Speaker, sir. This, again, in line with our food security policy. Cattle reproduction farm was launched, the House will recall, in December 2019, with 43 heifers. The herd now has grown to 72 heads. The sale price has been reviewed to make it more accessible to breeders and farmers, in line with the vision to increase local production, together with availability of manure for the zero-budget natural farming. And zero-budget natural farming, it is important to highlight, has now found its way in bold terms in our budget speech. Secondly, the Melrose cattle reproduction farm, Mr. Speaker, sir, will be expanded to 300 heads to allow provision of 200 calves annually to breeders. The setting up of the National Livestock Information System during the current financial year has allowed registration of some 1,022 farmers and identification of cattle, goat, and sheep. As at date, some 3,272 cattle and 187 sheep have been microchipped. This exercise is ongoing, where an average of 70 animals are microchipped every month. This exercise will be extended to road rigs during the coming financial year. The registration of farmers and animals has facilitated the certification for farmers to benefit from the heifer productivity incentive scheme and the calf productivity incentive scheme, and the incentive for milk production as well. 209 breeders have been certified to benefit from these schemes. In parallel, for livestock and cattle, Mr. Speaker, sir, comes the issue of disease surveillance. Disease surveillance is of crucial importance to develop the livestock sector, where animals of economic importance should be preserved. Laboratory equipment such as compact ELISA, microscope, and computers have been acquired. The ELISA kits have been obtained from the FAO, and which is going to provide additional equipment, vaccines, and expertise. Concerning the livestock feed subsidy scheme, Mr. Speaker, so it is important to highlight that the subsidy has been increased this year once again. You will recall, the House will recall that last year this subsidy was increased, was doubled last year from 4 rupees to 8 rupees per kilo of livestock feed, and this year this figure has been brought to 10 rupees per kilogram. The livestock community will benefit greatly from this assistance. And the statistics of my ministry show that on average, 370 breeders apply for the subsidy per month. On the question of the production of venison, Mr. Speaker, sir, I am pleased to announce that we have agreed on the proposal we have received from venison producers for the setting up of a small slaughterhouse near feedlots on game reserves. And with respect to pig production, it is important to highlight that the contract for rehabilitation and cleaning of wastewater treatment system at Saint-Martin, Phase 1, has been awarded under the National Environment and Climate Change Fund. As mentioned in the budget speech, Bassin Requin, the area known as Bassin Requin, will also be undertaken in the near future. On the fifth point, Mr. Speaker, sir, is the production of honey, where we still import 90% of our honey consumption from foreign countries. With a view to reducing our dependency on import, a number of incentives have been provided. For this year, it is important to highlight that the target of honey to be produced was 25 tons, and I am pleased to announce that the production has in fact reached 30 tons. Under the beekeeping scheme, therefore, training is being provided to those interested in beekeeping, together with a 50% grant to a maximum of 20,000 to eligible beekeepers for the purchase of beekeeping equipment and material. 14 beekeepers have benefited from this scheme, and a total amount of 244,682 have been dispersed. 311 persons, including 65 women, were trained in beekeeping in year 2020-2021. And a new model of beehive that resists pests has been developed and distributed to beekeepers, including 100 such beehives distributed last week in Rodrigue. The increase in bee colonies will greatly help in pollination and in maintaining the overall health of our ecosystem. The new measure announced in this budget for the grant of 500 rupees per bee queen will further support the sector. In addition, my ministry, Mr. Speaker, sir, is moving towards the establishment of additional dedicated bee zones. As at now, 64 beekeepers have been given access to place bee colonies at Petit Sable, La Ferme, and Brado. And since 2016, the Forestry Service has embarked in the plantation of melliferous plants. Up to now, some 17,000 have been planted, and this endeavor will continue. The scheme for acquisition of CCTV also will be extended to beekeepers, producers, and the introduction of new melliferous plants will enable year-round production of honey. Other facilities are being provided by the DBM, such as duty concession. The sixth point I want to highlight, Mr. Speaker, sir, when we talk of food security, we also in parallel have to talk about trade facilitation, namely the issue of sanitary and phytosanitary certificates. The Sanitary and Phytosanitary Information Management Portal, which is an online platform, was launched on 23rd August 2021 to facilitate trade operators with all SPS-related information that they may require in order to comply with the regulatory obligations in line with the International Plant Protection Convention. The online portal also provides a platform for online application of phytosanitary certificates, and exporters and the public can submit applications electronically for the export and import of plants and plant products. As at date, 3,193 online phytosanitary certificates, including 150 for export of fruits and vegetables, have been issued by the National Plant and Protection Office. This is, dans les grandes lignes, Mr. Speaker, sir, how we articulate the food security policy. Because, we say it again, we are facing unprecedented difficulties, and we do not know when we will be where we will see better days. The conflict in Ukraine and between Ukraine and Russia doesn't seem to be ending soon. Before ending on the agriculture sector, I want to make a mention spéciale pour Rodrigue, Mr. Speaker, sir. In Rodrigues, the new FARE and Small Farmers Welfare Fund antenna office is now a reality. It was inaugurated last week at Citronnelle. This will provide direct access to training, information, and services to the farmers and breeders of Rodrigue. Rodrigue was recently hit by the foot and mouth, and this has caused serious economic challenges for Rodriguan livestock sector. I have to highlight that with the help of the Indian Ocean Commission and l'Agence Française de Développement, the foot and mouth disease was contained last year with vaccination of animals, which was conducted both in Rodrigue and in Mauritius to prevent contamination. This has therefore allowed the movement of animals between Rodrigues and Mauritius to resume in February of this year, where the Mauritius Meat Authority is still the sole authorized entity to move animals from Rodrigue to Mauritius. It is only after completion of a sero-surveillance exercise that a decision will be taken as to resumption of normal movement, that is, other importers apart from Mauritius Meat Authority. It is interesting also to highlight that the price paid by the Meat Authority has gone up to 105 rupees per kg instead of the previous figure of 85 rupees per kg. Furthermore, for Rodrigues, we have agreed with the Agricultural Marketing Board for a floor price of 50,000 rupees per ton for the Rodriguan well-known onion called belle, excluding freight, and between 36 and 39,000 per ton, excluding freight, will be offered for the Francia variety of onion. I am also very pleased to announce that we have the Ministry of Agriculture, the Agricultural Marketing Board, and the Mauritius Shipping Corporation Limited have agreed on a discounted price for chilled containers on board the Black Rhino to move fresh products from Rodrigue to Mauritius. It has been noted that Rodrigues, furthermore, has the potential to produce around 40 tons of garlic annually. This is being explored. This will further reduce our import bill. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is just to highlight the amount of funding put in this budget in our food security strategy. This is not only a question of putting food on the table, but it is also in line with the policy of reducing import, thereby reducing spending our foreign exchange. Hopefully, we will boost our production, yet, as I have highlighted earlier, in 2020, we have seen, 2021, we have seen a growth of 9.5%. We expect it to be growing higher still. Before ending, Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to mention on one item which will concern my office at the Attorney General's office, and that concerns le fameux problème du sale by levy. This government is fully conscious of the plight of those who have to face this very painful process of sale by levy. As announced in this budget, the law will be amended as detailed by my colleague, the Minister of Finance, last Tuesday. What I want to highlight is that during this reform of the sale by levy process, I want to reassure my two colleagues from Rodrigues that the specificities of Rodrigues also will be taken into consideration when amending the law. I mean to say that if a property is situated physically in Rodrigues, there should be special provisions concerning, for instance, the publication and special provisions for the process itself, the way it is being held. Usually, the House will appreciate if a publication is done in a local newspaper, which is not even in circulation in Rodrigues, the general public is not aware of a sale by levy procedure being held. And there has not been many, but still one is still one too many. So we will take into consideration the problem of the specificities of Rodrigues during the time of the amendment to the sale by levy procedure. Before ending, I want to comment on what we are doing in these difficult times. I want to perhaps borrow the words of the Honorable Prime Minister. C'était le budget le plus difficile de l'histoire de notre pays. And this is indeed the case when we consider the context in which we are. And since this morning, when I've been listening to the opposition saying trop peu, pas assez, it's as if I've been listening to the same thing over year in, year out, the same thing over and over again. The less I say about that, the better. We know, in fact, the difficulty in which we are. C'est vrai, le budget le plus difficile à préparer. It will be in implementation. And the public out there, they know le sérieux avec lequel nous travaillons dans ce gouvernement. I am confident we will implement it, and it is together that we will face these difficult times. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.